Hello, I'm Mark Nanaman. Today, let's talk about how to improve your timer controls in Power Apps. All right, let's start by taking a look at what the default timer control settings look like. So let's just add a timer here to a Power App. So there we go. Here's our timer. And I don't know about you, but to me, this is a bit lackluster. So first of all, I mean, the styling looks a little outdated. We've got this thick border, this blue color. So all that is easy enough to change. We can just modify this here. And I would like to get rid of the border. I would like to get rid of the fill, or actually, excuse me, the fill. Let's see, where's our fill? There it is. So I would get rid of this. I would just do RGBA 0000 to get rid of the fill, and then I would change the font color. I would make the font color probably just black, so 0001. And then I'd probably change my font. Lately, I've been lacking the Lado hairline or the Lado light. There we go. Maybe bump this up a bit. Maybe give it semi-bold. Now let's go back to normal. So we can play with the styling a bit there and improve our timer. However, the way it reads is another issue. So let's just go take a look at how they set it up for default. So we click on our timer and we go to text, and we see this PowerFX expression here. So let's work from the inside out. We're first starting with this time function. And so the time function, it wants an input for hours, an input for minutes, and an input for seconds. So they've got a 0, 0, and then for the seconds, they've got self.value over 1,000 because the value is in milliseconds. So 1,000 converts this into seconds. Dividing by 1,000 converts it to seconds. So they get a time value here, and then they wrap that in a text function. And then here is where they set the format, how they want to convert the time into text. So the HH is code for hours with a leading 0 or preceding 0. Same with minutes and the same with seconds. So you could modify this a bit. You could take out the leading 0. So now it'll have one digit until it goes up to a 2-digit value, and then it'll add the second digit in. So you could modify it like that. You could also modify the separators however you want. So you've got some room to play here. You could maybe make them spaced out. One issue though is you couldn't type in labels. So you couldn't do hours, minutes, secs like that, because you see what's happening here. What's happening is these are kind of reserved characters. So every time it sees an H, it wants to put the hour value in there. Every time it sees an M, it wants to put the minute value there. Every time it sees an S, it wants to put the second value there. So when you start off, we've got all these zeros. If we were to run this timer, the different ones would change differently. See here, it's running. So every time there's an S, that's going up. So each one of these digits we're seeing change is an S in that code. So that's no good. There are some ways to get around this, however, and we can accomplish some more sophisticated labeling or rendering of our text labels for our timers if we like. So here I'll show you an example of what we can do, and then I'll walk you through how to do it. So right here I've got a count up timer, and it's counting up, and it's only showing us where we're at so far. So right now we have no minutes and no hours, so we're not seeing minutes and hours over here. we do have seconds. So we're seeing some seconds, and it says we've got this abbreviated version of seconds here. And you can see how it mirrors the out of the box timer up here. So they're all going the same. Down here also I've got a countdown timer, and it's counting down from 2 hours. So it's just the inverse of up here. And I've also down here I've got this clock, or the stopwatch, animated stopwatch. And I've got another video on how to animate a clock, and it's the same principles go into making this animated stopwatch. So you can check out that video to see how to do this. And I've got some buttons here that can control my timers. I can pause them, I can start them back up, or I could hit reset. And you saw right there, before I hit reset, we had hit the minute mark, and so the 1 minute had appeared before the seconds. So how do we do that? Well, let's take a peek here. Let's look at this count up timer. And I'm in the text property here. And the way I accomplish this is I use a few things. I use some nested with functions, and the with lets me store variables in line. And so we store some variables. So I start off by storing the value of the timer. I just call it V, and then V is set to self.value. So that's the value of the timer right now. After that, I store some divisors, some different numbers to divide by. So I've got divisor hours, divisor minutes, divisor seconds. So these are the numbers I would need to divide the current timer value by to get hours, minutes, or seconds. So to get hours, I need to divide by 1,000 times 60 to get minutes, times 60 to get an hour. To get minutes, I need to divide by 1,000 times 60. To get seconds, I just need to divide by 1,000. That's because the timer is in milliseconds. So we store all that in line here with these shortened variable names, so they're easier to reference. With that, I have a nested with, and this nested with is doing one thing only. It's creating a table, and we're just calling the table T for time. And the table has 3 records in it, and it's basically label value pairs. So I've got a label for hours, it's just abbreviated hours, and I got a label for minutes, it's abbreviated minutes, and a label for seconds, abbreviated seconds. And the value is called V for each one. And I'm just doing a round down on each of these. So for hours, I do round down of V, and V up here is self.value, divided by divisor for hours. And so that's divided by this number here. And then I put this 0 here to round to the nearest integer. And the same with minutes. We round down. Here I do, however, I add this modulum function. So we do a modulum of the V divided by divisor hours. So that gives us the remainder. So when we divide the current timer value by hours, the hours value, what is left over? We take what's left over and we divide that by minutes, by the minutes divisor, and that gives us the minutes value. The reason we want to do that is so that our minutes never go over 60. Because otherwise, if we didn't do this modulum function to get the remainder of whatever hours have transpired, we could get, we could get 70 minutes or 120 minutes. Now, you might want to do that in some situations, like, you see that in real life when you're looking at the length of a video online, let's say, or a podcast or something. A lot of times they won't do the hours, they'll just say 120 minutes or 180 minutes. So there are some situations where you might not want to do this, but here I'm showing you how to do it if you do want to break apart the hours from the minutes. Same down here with seconds. What we're going to do is we're going to round down. We're going to do a modulum again to get the remainder of the value divided by the minutes, and then we're going to divide that by seconds. And we're rounding that again. We're rounding that down to the nearest integer. So we do all that, and that creates us a table of paired labels and values. All right, so after we create our table of paired value and labels for our times, we need to create a string from that. And I don't want to have my string saying 0 hours, 0 minutes, 30 seconds, because if there are no hours and minutes yet, I just want them to not show up. To accomplish that, I filter my table. So we call our table, we save it in line with the width, we save it as T. So I can reference that table by T. So I do a filter on T, and then we have each item in T has a V property for the value. So I simply do a filter where I say V is greater than 0. I decided, though, that I do want it to say 0 seconds if we're on 0 seconds. So at least something shows up. So I do an OR. So I say OR label equals seconds. So if the label equals seconds, or if V is over 0, we will filter it into the collection we're working with. And then we do a concat on that. So we take whatever is either seconds or has a value over 0, and then we concat that. And my concat, I'm using this S string, this $sign string. And so I'm concating, I take the value, so whatever comes first out of our filter here. So if there are no hours, but there's some minutes and some seconds, what will happen is we'll take the V from minutes, and we'll take the label from minutes and put, so the value will go here. So if this one right here is 1 minute, a 1 goes here. And then a minutes will go here. And then we've got a space here. We've got a trailing space to help space it out. And then the next thing, let's say this was 30 seconds. So we have 30 here for the V. Then after that, there will be a 30 space seconds. And so this concat makes that string to show up in the timer label. And I'll just hit play to demonstrate a little bit. Let me hit start. So we had a bit of a lag here because of my screen recording. So we skipped, I didn't see the 1 show up. It just went straight to 2, but it's working fine. Okay, finally, let's take a look at how to do a countdown timer. So basically, we want to inverse what we're doing up here for our count up or standard timer. So here's the timer property. I got it selected. And let's go to the text property. So it's going to be very similar to what we looked at before. We're storing the values in line here. We've got the same kind of divisor thing going on here, and then we've got our table here where we're creating a table. It's very similar, however, a few things are different. One thing is for my value, instead of just self.value, I take self.duration, so that's how long the timer will go, how long it's programmed to go, and I'm subtracting self.value from self.duration because we're inverting this, we're counting down. And my divisors for hours, minutes, and seconds are the same. Then we go down here to the table. So we're creating our table of time and label values, of labels paired with values. And we're storing it as T here. And for each one of these, at least for the hours and the minutes, I'm rounding down. So I don't want them rounding up. I want them rounding down since we're doing a countdown timer. But I do want seconds to show up like normal, so I do round up on it. And basically, it's the same as what we looked at before. We get the remainder with the modulum function, and then we divide it by the appropriate divisor, whether it's seconds, minutes, or hours. So that creates our array, our table of time values and time labels paired together. And we do the same thing here. We're filtering V is greater than 0. Here I've got it a little bit different. I say V is greater than 0 and V is less than 60. So I don't want it to show 60 minutes. If it's, I don't want that. So if we're at 60 minutes, then I don't want to see that. Or 60 seconds. And then we concat it with the V for the value and the label here again. So if our countdown timer, let's see, what is our duration set to? I believe the duration is 2 hours. Let's look at this. So I've got, yeah. So we start with 2 hours. Let's hit start. So we started at 2 hours and then it went down to 1 hour, 59 minutes. And then when our seconds went down from 60, it went to 59 and then started counting down further. So there we go. That's how you can create a countdown timer. All right, well, there you have it. Those are a few ways to improve the styling of your timer controls and Power Apps. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to check out the blog post in the description below if you want to copy the code or see how to do this in more details. Have a great day.